And we should have taken the otter's advice that walked out of the bay, pooped on our set, and then walked back into the bay. That was like...
It should have been a sign.
It should have been a sign like, you're not going to use this shot. Even the otter knew you're not going to use this shot.
Welcome, everyone, to the behind the scenes podcast for the Adventure Mindset by Eden Grace. I've known Brandon for
2012? 13 years?
2012, we met.
Yeah.
So however many years 12. That is. What year is this? 12
exactly.
years. Okay.
I don't know.
If you have not watched his video, if you haven't watched the other videos, please do find it on the Road Home SG on social media. There's 3 amazing stories. Brandon's is the last one, so please catch those. I want to give a special thanks first to National Integration Council, just for supporting the whole project. For those that have not watched the video, just a quick summary, that this video actually features Brandon and his integration story of how he moved to Singapore in 2008, was helped initially by a dear friend, Joseph Chian, eventually got married, and settled down, and is helping other people in Singapore through his work and through the community. Let's give a little cheers.
Oh yeah.
To the Adventure Mindset.
Drinking some powerful decaf.
I'm drinking some powerful water. The audience, the people online really enjoy it. There's a lot of things a lot of great feedback about it. And that's kind of what this podcast, the behind the scenes, like audience edition is about, is to kind of pick up on some of the things that the online viewers picked out. And that really made the video special as well. So let's start out with Eden. Like, how did that happen that Eden ends up being the narrator for this story?
So a little bit of backstory was I did your story. The road, I don't know if it was Road Home, The Way Home or something.
Good point. Yes, you produced Where I Know I'm Home in 2016, which did win an award from NIC in 2019, just FYI. Okay.
Yeah, it was a great production. It was a great journey. You and me are mostly into documentary. And so that was our natural approach, was let's do something that's just whether it's monologue or interview with documentary, observable type footage. But whenever you're going to produce your own story, specifically as a producer, somebody behind the camera, it tends to be more difficult, because it's like, I even shot the scene of me walking down the road in slow motion, putting on my father's coat, and it made me look really cool. And I feel like to make myself look maybe more documentary style, more like going through this really serious emotion. And so my wife was saying that try not to make it serious. And I really didn't know. We went through multiple drafts. You helped. I think you wrote a script as well. And it was all that very serious tone, observable documentary style. I think it's when we produced the podcast with Eden and you were listening to it, you're like, oh, it would be so cool if she could do your narration of story. And I was like, that's exactly the right idea. And it took like a year to get into that, to find that perfect idea. If we did not produce the podcast, which was never launched, if we had not produced that podcast, at least in beta form, you wouldn't have known. But it's like that one idea took off. And then it also removed me from trying to be so serious and cerebral and dramatic. And I think that was the one key. Yeah. It's just that one thing that made the whole thing switch.
Sure. Yeah. Kind of relieve some of the pressure. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, that it's not so much all on you.
I don't think anybody wants to look at me as cool. Like, oh, Brandon's so cool, walking down the street looking so, or like so drama. Well, I don't think people want to see that. So,
and that's a good point that being, both of us have always been behind the camera. We're filming other people. We're trying to interview them and coach them and stuff. But to be in front of the camera, it's your story. It's your life out there, man. But do you want to say, awesome job.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, did a great job. Yeah.
Prove to myself what a bad actor I am.
The podcast that Eden was doing, what was that called? Who was that for initially?
So Common Ground, big thanks to Common Ground. We're in their meeting room.
Thank you.
Thank you, Common Ground.
Awesome place.
Awesome civic center in Badok that everybody should visit. they wanted to produce something called Kids Guide to Life.
It's true. Yeah. It's last year, which would have been somewhere beginning of 2023. I remember somehow I was in your office and listening to your guys, at least one of the drafts of the podcast, and like really fun. And Eden was doing the voiceover, and like, that sounds amazing. Like, she should do your video, you know?
One school day, Scared Cat and Sad Cat were at recess playing yarn bow toss, which, as you can tell by the name, is kind of like playing catch, but with a yarn bow.
And like, that's awesome. I mean, I'm glad that all of you were like game for that. And like you said, everyone kind of jumped in, and Eden did a great, Eden jumped in, you know.
It made it a lot easier too, because at that point, we don't have to film an interview and do like more of those type of shots.
Right.
It became harder in a way because we had so many scenes then to cover, but it became easier because then we could record her voiceover early and then just slot in these kind of more hilarious supporting footages.
Okay.
And if it wasn't funny, like we did shoot some things that were serious, and I'm looking like really depressed, and it's just sort of like, this is not really the right tone. It should be a little bit wacky, but not too wacky. And that's hard.
It was a bit dark.
It was dark. And
it fit the mood. Yeah.
And we should have taken the otter's advice that walked out of the bay, pooped on our set, and then walked back into the bay. That was like...
It should have been a sign.
It should have been a sign like, you're not going to use this shot. Even the otter knew you're not going to use this shot.
Let's hit on a really dear friend of yours that helped you, that's featured in the video. That, speaking of that, the downtime that you experienced when you first came to Singapore in 2008, because this is real life. I mean, it really happened.
Yep.
A dear friend, Joseph Chian, helped you.
Yeah.
You know, like maybe go back to... well, one, how he helped you a bit, but also in the video, like how special is it to feature him, knowing that, he passed just in November last year.
I wouldn't have come to Singapore without Joe. And he was always there whenever I was going through a hard time. I mean, this is a guy that you could cry in front of, you know. Maybe we don't always have those friends where we feel like a little bit embarrassed. And so I was definitely going through culture shock. Because I was starting to reject the culture, and that's what culture shock does, right? We reject the food, we reject the temperature, we reject the crowdedness of the place, and I was going through that. And so I definitely call on Joe because he was responsible for bringing me to Singapore. And so it was really important that he was featured. And I don't think it was my idea. I think that was your idea, actually, in the initial scripting phase was like, let's bring Joseph Chen in. And I'm like, wow, this guy's really busy. He's leading an organization. But it was the same thing. He's like, put on your adventure cap, put on your adventure mindset. And I had to realize that I just was not. I was not in exploratory. I was in my own comfort zone. And so featuring him, and it was only after he was unfortunately killed in a car accident in Turkey, that we decided to actually put in the soundbite of him and kind of work him into the story. And it was on my mind. So it was really important. I think he had a voice in the project, because if it wasn't for him, I was on that verge of possibly leaving Singapore. And if I left Singapore, I wouldn't have started my business. I wouldn't have met my wife. I wouldn't have met you and actually started a production company. And so that's how crucial I think it was, and to include him into the story at the end of the day.
Well, like you said, it's really interesting because you interviewed Joe for the video 2022.
I think so. I think it was probably like July or August 2022. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. A year and a half ago.
Yeah. So like you said, I mean, that's when we were still thinking of it as a documentary, even before Eden came into the picture. But it might have even been your wife as well that mentioned about putting Joe back in for this.
It was. Yeah. She was. Well, it was on my mind. I was trying to figure out how, because everything is a voiceover from a kid's perspective. Yeah. So how will it look if I put in this soundbite
place or something? Yeah.
And it was only when we were walking home and my wife turned to me and was like, "Are you gonna put him back into the video?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I just have to find a way." And so in the initial cut, it was a bit longer. that we had of his soundbite, and we just kind of skimped it down to the bare essentials. But yeah, it worked out.
Yeah, it's really nice. I think a lot of people also appreciated that as well. Both the interview, I mean, the longer video with Joe, and also having him in there. I mean, it's really, it's made the video all the more special.
Initially, I mean, we were going through the concept where I would actually start my story in Los Angeles. And actually, I had my wife film me in Los Angeles, walking in this glowing sunlight, but like depressed.
You're right. I forget about that.
And then you're like, I don't think that's needed. Let's just skip through it.
Yep.
So
start in
that
Singapore,
was cut. But that was like 2 years plus ago, I think. This is like the everlasting 3-year project.
Well, okay. So speaking of other people, like in the project, special people in the project, really appreciate also how you including your family as well. I mean, almost all your family. So your daughter from Narrator, Xiao, your wife, being featured in there as well. Even your mother-in-law, giving you the father-in-law's jacket.
I'm really surprised that she agreed.
Yeah. Did a great job. Yeah, and then a little tribute to your father-in-law as well. Yeah, maybe like what was, and even you guys including footage of actually going down to his niche and everything, and the quote. Really, I thought it was really powerful, really special. What was that? What was that like to have that?
It's a little bit of backstory because my father-in-law said that to me on Christmas 2014 when he was at SGH at that time, because he was in the hospital fighting terminal cancer. And it was just outside. We were having basically Christmas dinner in the hospital. Thank you, SGH, for giving us like a side room for all of us to be in there. It's like almost like the nurses' resting quarters or like a waiting room of some kind. And he was outside of the room on a bed, so you couldn't wheel in the bed. And he said that to me. I just walked up to him and he said that to me as like, it's a privilege to love and it's a privilege to be loved. And I'm like, whoa, that's really impactful. I'm like, that is so true. And it was a privilege to be accepted by a Singapore family. It's a privilege to love a Singapore family and be part of the culture. And so this might have been another one of your ideas to bake that in. Because originally when you think of integration, you just think of, okay, this is what I went through. And by bringing that in, it's bringing like it's more like I'm on a learning journey. Like I'm getting stuff from others, like
what you've learned.
Yeah. Like, so I got the adventure mindset because of a Singaporean named Joseph Chin. I got this like revelation of it's a privilege to be part of a culture through my father-in-law, acceptance, the coat, because after he passed, my mother-in-law gave me this coat, and funny enough, it fit perfectly. So I don't know if he bought like a bigger size for himself or what, because I'm like twice his size. He was a small guy.
Really interesting.
And so he, and just that that process of being accepted and embracing Singapore for all the ups and downs and everything that is in the life here, I think is part of the journey. It's part of the story. It's the greater story. It's not just integration, but are you going to learn? Are you going to get uncomfortable and make some hard decisions and hard choices and be really part of the culture? And
Well, and this is one of those interesting videos where like we both know each other. Like I'm just thinking like I was at your father-in-law's wake, and like it was really just touching. Right. I think you did a tribute video there, if I remember right.
His legacy video.
Yeah, beautiful and like really special. And like if I'm thinking even in terms of integration, like it is such a visual way to show like your acceptance and by the family. Like it's a great like visual. I mean, as far as it provides, like it's a way to see that not only have they accepted you, but now you're kind of carrying on in some way. Like even some of the family legacy was really, I thought it was a really nice picture of integration that was really special as well. Because it's not your usual or typical stuff that you hear about. Like, two, I thought it would be special to include it in the video.
Yeah. I think it's when we put it together on a script, it could be, I think one of our things was it's kind of like a little bit all over the place. It's got some like funny moments, but it's got some like serious moments.
Yeah.
And trying to weave that together was always I'm sure we'll talk about it, but that's always like the transitions part of it all. Like
the emotion. Yeah.
How far do we go with this whole thing?
Yeah. But it did, amazingly, it did work out. Yeah, well, and there's one more on your father-in-law is how in the world we got an actor to play him that seemed to resemble him quite well. Georgie Lee, that I happen to know, and I'm not sure if you may have been about the age of your father-in-law, but he came to my mind and I messaged him. He said okay.
Yeah.
And then we ended up trying to find a location close by his home, Botanic Gardens, which also worked out like really well. But yeah, but then in the end, even like whenever he put on the jacket, he put on the hat, you guys took a photo together. Even your family was saying there was a resemblance.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely has more hair than my father-in-law, but just that the structure of his head and when it's over a newspaper, so we changed our plans not to show the whole face, but just show partial. It worked really well because he is wearing my father-in-law's jacket. He's wearing my father-in-law's hat.
Yeah.
And funny enough, in that shot, I'm wearing my father-in-law's black floral shirt that I got after he passed away as well. So there's like little Easter eggs in there.
Yeah.
But how you got him, because our budget was limited, so finding like proper actors and going down the proper actor route was hard. Yeah.
Well, so Brother Georgie, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Brother Georgie.
Yeah.
You're awesome, man.
Yeah. It was a wonderful time. He's always just an awesome person. I appreciate his time and coming down for it. It was a great shoot. Yeah.
Yeah. And Botanic Gardens was also, I think, your idea. You had like a movie reference or
Yeah. Well, and that was the next thing I was going to go into is, exactly. Movie references. There's a couple that are probably kind of worth mentioning that. So one is the Botanic Gardens, which thank you, Botanic Gardens as well for permission to film.
Thank you, Botanic
National
Gardens.
Parks and Botanic Gardens. Thank you. But then the idea of both you sitting down at the bench, it made me think of Good Will Hunting. Robin Williams, Matt Damon sitting down, because it's a similar, or I don't know, you have a different generation, almost like a fatherly figure maybe in Good Will Hunting, and they're sitting down there, and it's kind of a beautiful park and kind of an important scene as well. And so because that was a turning point, I think, in Good Will Hunting as well. So it worked out quite nice. I think
it worked out perfectly because we had a lot of cafes or like coffee shops.
Yeah.
In our original script, it was like I started off in a coffee shop. I was depressed in a coffee shop, and then I meet my father-in-law in a coffee shop. It was just like, we need some variety here.
Well, and you're right. And so it gives a chance to show off a little bit of Singapore as well. You know, great parks, Botanic Gardens, iconic. I mean, internationally. So it's nice to be able to feature that a little bit.
Yeah, the show. I think that was probably one of the greatest parts. Is like we showed a lot of different parts of Singapore, which is, I think, for an external person's perspective, it's, you know, you see like Little India, I'm jogging in, you see Marina Bay, I'm jogging in, the Hawker Center, Botanic, what else do we have?
But one more movie kind of reference, which was interesting, because some of this, I mean, it's real life, but it's also a little bit fictionalized as well, because you're trying to like portray it for a video in a fun way, like, and keeping like with the kids' idea. But the running scene, which originally, first, I don't know how, I think maybe it was the Adventure Cap that did it or something, but we came up with the idea of like having like a Rocky montage, like you're training, you're going to go into the adventure, like you're ready to go. You even picked out Rocky music.
Yep.
and so it was like, how does that work?
And you got to do it like almost exactly like Rocky in order for it to pass. Because I mean, Rocky starts with like these bricks in his hands, and it's really funny, and he's jogging through the city and people are running after him, and it could be assimilated, but it was quite challenging. It was quite tough to try to make these kind of scenes exact. But if we put in Rocky music, then maybe, I mean, people would understand. But at the end of the day, when we changed the music, that Rocky music didn't really fit the overall tone.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll talk about music, but tone throughout the whole film was crucial to find.
Right.
Yeah. And that's why we didn't But I think some people might realize it's kind of Rocky-ish. Maybe.
Yeah, well, and you're right. I think the idea comes across that it's a little bit of a corny superhero-ish training, getting ready for your adventure kind of thing. I mean, so I think that idea comes across, whether little kids wouldn't know Rocky, but like other people, maybe people are thinking of Marvel or Batman or Superman or something. But yeah, on the locations bit, I totally right. I thought that was a great. I think everyone probably enjoys seeing different parts of Singapore in there, from coffee shops, the time lapse in the CBD, like Raffles Place area.
The Indiana Jones or whatever. You had like the depressing Indiana Jones shot.
Well, I think the time lapse kind of covered that. Okay. Yeah. So it kind of covered that moment. There's the bed shot, which is very interesting and creative. Where like it's like turning around. So let's give a shout out to the crew, to the director of photography, camera assistant, awesome guys.
Yeah. They really are the unsung heroes of the whole thing, because when we would always be on set, you and me would be like looking at each other and would be like, if you and me did this, if you and me shot this, it wouldn't look like this.
Yep.
Like
one camera.
It definitely takes a certain type of DP, director, crew that really says, I'm going to spend longer on this because I want it to look right.
Yeah.
I'm going to put in this extra slider, or I'm going to take time and put up extra lights because I care that my product looks good.
Right. You're right. Like they were personally invested in this.
The twist over my bed is not on a jib. It is just him with the camera, and he's sweating. He's like pouring sweat. I think his sweat is dripping on me because he's just like over me and he's twisting that camera.
Yes.
But you can't tell. It's really smooth.
He is standing on the bed. I have a photo of this, which we're not going to post, but yeah, I mean, it's real. It's the real deal. Like that's manually done. Yeah. There's in a way, there's no camera tricks on that. But yeah, I mean, awesome guys that really added a lot to this. The Clark Key River scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, really nice.
Actually, he had to bring a light out with like battery operated light. So people are walking by thinking it looks like a drama because we have like a crew there, not knowing this is just a small video online. A lot of people like taking photos. Is this like some kind of drama? It looked like a drama. So again, stellar crew, must have. Well,
and just a few more things I thought really added that they brought kind of to the video was one is the movie projector scene. Adding that where like, ordinarily you would just kind of throw in your old footage.
Yeah, old B-roll footage.
Yeah, but yet the idea the director had and you guys went out to shoot was Eden watching it just really made it nice. And there was even moments where she was able to, she's looking at your life. And
wouldn't it be better if she's like watching this footage and then she's reacting to this footage? So it doesn't take her out of it, because she is sort of telling like a fairy tale or in that kind of atmosphere, some story. So it was a brilliant idea. And you don't really realize it, but there's like, we had to bring like the smoke, like the smoke haze to try to make it hazy so you could see the actual light coming from the projector.
For the projector?
Yeah. So it's all those like little things.
What did you guys use to smoke?
You can buy canned like smoke.
Oh.
So I have one and he has a can. So he's like, I'll just use your can, I guess.
I had no idea. Bring it.
Yeah. So because you're not going to see the light.
Yeah, right. You need like
we probably actually should have done that for this podcast too. It'll look better with some haze, right? Didn't even think about it. But yeah, it's all those like little things that you have to think about, and the viewer just doesn't see.
Yeah.
And then he filmed me outside. I mean, this was extra time that I just couldn't pay him for.
Yeah.
But he's like, I'll walk by your sign and then I'll tape you in the office. Yeah. And then while you're editing it, we'll cut to that shot. And it's just like really nuanced ideas that made it, you don't really get the connection. I mean, for the viewer, it just looks natural.
Right. Yeah.
But it really takes a lot of creative intention to come out with that.
Yeah. And they did a great job with the closing scene as well. You looking out over the Singapore skyline, and you got the kids at the playground. Really nice way to end the whole film. Yeah,
I was trying to like turn in a way where like I think it was shot slightly slow, where like the jacket would kind of like flip like a cape, right? So it was like when you turn, like flick your coat,
Oh,
like so it has like you wouldn't even notice because you have to have like a really long jacket.
Oh, you need like a trench coat.
Yeah,
like a raincoat.
Like Neo in it pulls out his, you know.
Not what we're going for. Matrix is not what we're going for.
Like where you turn and it flows. It didn't really work. But anyway,
interesting. I didn't know this. I wasn't there for that shoot.
Yeah,
but so the last one of the last ones is music. How did that come about? Yeah, tell us your journey.
I should be asking you because it was something that our reference for this whole film was two references that we kept on going back to. Was NPR did a little web video on like they're kind of like stories of how the Honeycrisp apple came about that you see in the grocery store. So it was like, this is story time, children. That's kind of like how they did it. And then another reference was Old New, which is also narration with this kind of quirky B-roll. So those were our visual references. And all the music that we picked out before, they were nice tracks. We're kind of like, okay, it'll be Get Shorty, and then it will be like The Perfect Day or one of those George Clooney movies. I forget. It was like The Perfect, I don't know. He's in New York, some rom-com. And the thing is you have this kid telling a story, and with these different genres of music coming in, it sounded very adult. So I was struggling with the music, and then that's when I turned to you, and I was like, okay, maybe you can help me. And we sourced, I think like 100 plus tracks, and we tried to fit them in. And still, it's not like story time. And everything that we were looking at for kids music, children music, sounded like that really ukulele, you know, really childish ukulele music that you hear all the time on commercials. So as I was giggling to myself when I found this track for the running scene on one of the music sites, and I showed you, and then you sort of just said, oh, I get it now. I'll run with it. So you actually found them. I don't know where you found them, but you found all these musics that were all sort of like fairy tale Disney. I don't know how you would describe it.
Yeah.
A little bit of.
Well, I think like you said, the breakthrough to me from music, because I think like you weren't finding tracks. I mean, you had some what do you call it, guide tracks or something down, or some preliminary tracks, but I don't think either of us were kind of feeling it. But then I thought the breakthrough happened when you found that track that's now used for the running scene. That was like adventure. I think we said Pirates of the Caribbean or something like that. And when you did that, I thought that was like everything clicked, or that was like a breakthrough, because it's like, oh, so it's that kind of kids show with kids music where it's more like an adventure, which I don't know why we didn't think of that before. You know, like we should have thought about that long. You would think it's very obvious, right? But this stuff like comes up later, much later. So actually closer to like when we were finishing the whole video. But once you did that and it turned into this kid's adventure, I was like, hey, I think that would really, that could really be nice. So I also looked around for tracks, and it was, I mean, you already, in your script, and you already built in things like princess and stuff like that. So it's already there, but the music really helps, I think, bring it to life. I'm a little bit of a music guy, play some instruments and sing and stuff. So, and I enjoy help with finding the music that kind of brings the video to life, and even kind of adjusting it and arranging it and stuff. So
that's the hard thing about music, is like, you almost don't want the audience to notice the music.
Yeah.
It's supposed to just kind of like be part of the mood. Like you go see, I just watched Dune 2, and it's all that kind of thing. Like the music you sort of notice, but it's amplifying the whole emotion, the mood of every single scene.
That really helped. Like in the beginning scene, I think we were saying it was like kind of like Jurassic Park. You know, it's kind of cool. And it is true. Like you're wearing a shirt and you're kind of entering into this, new place. It kind of does remind you of Jurassic Park. And then towards the end, I mean, just even with the father-in-law and the jacket, and you going out into the world to help people with your work to make a difference. Like that was really, I mean, the music is kind of nice that it climaxed there, and you want it to be kind of powerful and stuff. So it worked. And then I think the last track was kind of nice. The last scene is just like, at the end of the day, like Eden's she's just a girl enjoying, being with her friends in Singapore, and you guys are a family. And that's kind of, you kind of just back out of the storytelling, and it's more in kind of just, this is just a regular family in a sense. For your work scene, when you're working, you're at the computer, and then it cuts to you actually see, some shots that you're looking at, and you and Shower in there, and you're with some migrant workers. So there was something you guys did called Migrant Story. I can't remember when that was, 2015 or something. That was
it probably was 20. Yeah. No, it was before that, like 2013,
Okay.
2013,
Wow.
2013, I think. Yeah.
Well, and maybe just tell us a little bit about that, because I just also happened to have been around, been working in the same office as you.
Yeah.
And I was a part of that, and where you and Shao decided to come together with your companies and do something in the area for migrant workers.
Yeah, that was an interesting story because what we noticed is like everywhere around us was pockets of migrant workers everywhere. Working on different projects. And so we wanted to come up with some way to bless them. And so we put our heads together. I mean, you were part of it, where we came up with this thing called Migrant Story, because since we were in an arts building, we had to come up with something for the arts event that they have every year.
Singapore Night Festival?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. Singapore Night Festival. Our thing was like, what could we do for them? Yeah. So we invited them down to Food for Thought for a dinner. We took photos. So we had Robert and some other people take some photos that we would print out and give it to the migrant workers that they could send home to their family.
Yeah.
And then we did the art exhibition where we put it on the walls of our offices, and then people coming through for the art night, the night festival, would be able to come in and see some of like a little snippet of their stories, and like, these are our migrant workers in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Here's a picture of them,
professionally
professionally done with a little bit of their backstory.
Right. Yeah. And there's a separate video. I don't know if we'll put it online or not. There's a separate video just on Migrant Story. So it literally put a face, to workers.
And you won't see me and Thomas dancing with the migrant workers, which we had to take out.
We had to cut that.
The
executive producer.
But it's there in Migrant Story.
Yeah.
You can watch us dancing with a bunch of
we'll see if we can put that up somewhere.
Guys.
It's worth putting up. It's a good little story by itself.
Yeah, it was a time where all of our different like little companies, along with Food for Thought and the Thought Collective at that time, could put something together, collaborate on a project together.
Yeah. Nice. Well, that about does it for me. Thanks to Brandon, and glad I could be the executive producer for this series. And each story was really nice. The series was put online last year, and it's a really special series. So if people haven't caught it, please do. The Road Home SG. It actually has all the videos on there, not only from the road home, but also Where I Know I'm Home from the first series in 2016. Watch that. Thank you, everyone, for your support and for watching. Enjoy the videos, share them. It's really helpful, and hopefully it helps Singapore as well.
Yeah, be blessed.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cool.